And Larry will be back in a little bit with some music to send us out on. The presenter of our main talk today is an active member of our community, Prazan, and this is his description: son of Nebraska, American traveler, and amateur historical observer. And he's going to talk to us about humanist poetry of Carl Sandburg. So let's give a warm welcome to Aaron this morning.
Thanks, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. So yeah, that's Carl Sandburg. And talk a little bit about Carl Sandburg and about poetry today. And first of all, I want to know, I know this is a risky proposition, right? Poetry, really? Seriously? Right? Now, some of you guys have reverence for music, maybe, you know, not a worship, obviously. And, you know, like an ecstatic, emotional, transcendent reaction, right? Maybe you build electronic altars to your favorites. And music's important, but poetry? Come on, right? Is this erotic poetry? Right? No. No. So this is a risky proposition. It's not Shel Silverstein for the kids. But you know, I want to make the point that hello. Oh, right. Thank you. So I want to make the point that, you know, reading familiar things leads to contemplation, and that's something that a lot of the things that we read, you know, politics and science, doesn't necessarily get at the marrow of who we are as people. And music kind of, you know, can take you away, but it doesn't really get you in there all the time. And you know, we maybe look at people of the book and say, what do you need a book for? And I'm not saying that this is the book that you need. I'm not saying that. But anyway, we're going to talk about poetry today. So I know it's risky. So read poetry. How many people here read poetry? Wow! I was expecting like one or two or none, right? How many people have bought a book of poetry or paid for a poetry thing, you know, performance in the past year or so? Okay, well, great. But then these are my peoples, right?
That means you can skip the next slide.
Yes, right? You're not wrong. You guys are right on. I figured, you know, there's some pros to poetry, right? It's cheap. The books are short, right? But impressive.
You can read it over and over and over.
You can read it over and over. Yeah. In a shorter period of time than other things. And if it's Carl Sandburg, you can still look manly. Right? Some poets maybe not, right? Gertrude Stein maybe not. But it can still look manly. So for those of you that want to do that, and there's layers of meaning there, and that's really what we're going to talk about. We're talking about humanist themes of Carl Sandburg. So I have, for those of you who are quantitative in nature, you project managers, you scientists, you ladies leaning in, okay, I have some quantitative goals for today. No walkouts, okay? I want 50% of you to want to read a poem later, and 25% of you to actually do it. Okay? And then, you know, 15% of those to read another one, and, you know, maybe 10% of you go out and spend that money. And it looks like we already had, you know, more than that. So maybe I ought to up my game, really shoot them low. But hopefully some new poems are going to come out of this. All right, so those are our goals, and we're not going to measure this at the end. Okay. So you're going to measure it yourself. So this is not a biography. We're not really going to talk about man that much. But the most important thing I can emphasize is he's an American. He's really, really American. He really documented American history and culture and dialect and people and faults and tragedy over and over again like nobody else. Really American. If you're coming at Carl Sandburg and you're not like steeped in American culture, you're going to learn some stuff, and there's going to be things that can go over your head, like watching a Simpsons episode in another language. He was a worker, and he served in war, although it was a Spanish-American war, and it wasn't in, like, you know, the Philippines where there was really bad stuff happening. It was in Puerto Rico and Cuba, where there was still, you know, war and battle, but, I mean, could have done a lot worse. But he was a soldier, and he spent a lot of time kind of wandering around, doing a lot of different jobs in the Midwest and Northeast and in the West. So he got to see a lot of America. And then once he became a poet, he traveled even more and observed even more. I can't emphasize enough how American this guy is. And he's a man of letters. He's not a poet. He's a man of letters. This is a writer who distinguished himself in poetry, won 2 Pulitzers for poetry, which is big. Very few poets have done that. Also won a Pulitzer for a biography of Lincoln, a 4-volume biography of Abraham Lincoln that's still considered one of the best histories of man. You know, he wrote other biographies as well, including an autobiography. He did this book here. This alone is a lifetime achievement, okay? This is called the American Song Bag. This is a compilation of American folk songs published in 1927. And I'll just read a little bit about his description of it from his original introduction. The song history of America will accomplish 2 things. It will give the feel and atmosphere, the layout and the lingo of regions, of breeds of men, of customs and slogans, in a manner and air not given in regular history, to be read and not sung. And besides, such a history would require that the student sing his way through most of the chapters. This is an American history of song. He's got 270 songs with the music and a history of where the song came from regions all over the country. This alone would be a lifetime achievement, and that was just like one thing he did for a while. He also won a Grammy for spoken word. He just did a lot. He's also the only poet to address a joint session of Congress. And this, a radical communist socialist member of the Socialist Party during the Cold War. How do you not get killed for that? You know, and not even not get killed, but be invited into the joint session of Congress. There's really no writer that I can think of that has his stature of achievement. I mean, Garrison Keillor comes to mind, but he's not radical. He's kind of a funny man. He's a patron of the arts. This guy is writing about tough stuff. So now the themes. He's not a romantic. Not a romantic guy. Wrote some love poems, but they're not romantic. Okay, so I got to edit here. I'm not going to read as many as I wanted to, but 661. So this is called 2 Moon Fantasies, and I'm actually only going to read the first of the 2. She bade the moon stand still, and the moon stood still for her, and at her request came to a still stand. I am in love, she was saying. She reached up with a single finger, pushed the moon with one little finger, and put the moon where she wanted it. I am in love, she was saying. On a later day, far later, she found her magic lacking. The moon was the same, and her one finger the same, yet nothing happened. And her laughter rang glad as she cried, "It was a good trick while it lasted." Those are the kind of love poems that he writes, right? 397. This one is really, this one's a lot more sort of difficult. So this is the River Moon. Again, the moon, it's not always about the moon, just these 2. River moon. The moon in the river, mother, is a red, red moon tonight. I'm going away on the wild, wild moon. The moon so red on the river tonight, mother. A man with a wild dream on his tongue, a flying wild dream in his head and his heart. A man is here with a runaway drum in his ribs and shots of the sun and the runners of his blood. I'm going away on the red, wild, runaway moon. The moon on the river, mother, is red tonight. The mist on the river is white, and the moon on the mist is white. I remember, mother, I remember he came when the moon was red, with a runaway drum in his ribs. I remember, mother, the shots of the sun and the runners of his blood, the flying wild dream on his tongue. Tonight I remember, tonight with the mist on the river white and the moon on the mist white, something is gone. Is it him that's gone? Or is it the red, wild, runaway moon that's gone? Right? It's like, you know, he's got this realism that there exists such a thing as romance and passion and perfection, but it's not permanent, right? As the Romantics would have written, they would have ended it at the halfway point. And Sandburg never does that. So he's got a lot of beautiful language. He wrote of Lake Michigan at night as black as a pile of black cats. He wrote of trees in the wintertime. He said, I remember the loans the sun gave you in June. He's got some really good stuff. This one here is really beautiful. It's called Wind Song. And it's kind of similar to that other one. It says, long ago I learned how to sleep in an old apple orchard where the wind swept by, counting its money and throwing it away. But can you imagine the piles of leaves, the wind counting its money and throwing it away? In a wind-gaunt orchard where the limbs forked out and listened or never listened to all, in a path of trees where the branches trapped the wind into whistling, who are you? I slept with my head in an elbow on a summer afternoon, and there I took a sleep lesson. There I went away saying, I know why they sleep. I know how they trap the tricky winds. Long ago I learned how to listen to the singing winds, and how to forget, and how to hear that deep whine, slapping and lapsing under the day blue and the night stars. Who are you? Who can ever forget listening to the wind go by, counting its money and throwing it away? He just has a real way with language, and a lot of the stories that he tells, including the children's stories, which he wrote 3 collections of, which are just basically American fairy tales, throwaway Hans Christian Andersen. They're really just fantastic. I don't know why they're not read more, and we still keep going back to the 3 Little Pigs. They're really good. And the language in there is just like tumbling rocks, you know. You can't stop reading the sentences because they flow out so well. So that's another reason to read Sandburg. I should say he got this from practice. He had high school education, but he ended up with 12 honorary doctorates. Never graduated from college, got thrown out of West Point. Still, just a fantastic language smith. A lot of the themes are themes for everyone, okay? I'm going to read some of the tougher ones later, but a lot of the themes are themes for everyone. This one here is really good. It's called Happiness. I really like it. He says, happiness. I asked professors who teach the meaning of life to tell me what is happiness. And I went to famous executives who boss the work of thousands of men. I like that phrase, boss the work. We don't say that anymore. They all shook their heads and gave me a smile as though I was trying to fool with them. And then one Sunday afternoon, I wandered out along the Des Plaines River and I saw a crowd of Hungarians under the trees with their women and children and a keg of beer and an accordion. End of story. Right? Happiness. Like those kinds of themes are really familiar to everyone. There's another one called Fish Crier. I know a Jew fish crier down on Maxwell Street with a voice like a north wind blowing over corn stubble in January. Can't really imagine what that voice is like, but he dangles herring before prospective customers, evincing a joy identical with that of Pavlova dancing. His face is that of a man terribly glad to be selling fish, terribly glad that God made fish and customers to whom he may call his wares from a pushcart. Just the joy of simple work, right? So a lot of these things are themes for everybody, but most of his work is not like that. Most of his work is a little more difficult, and it's a little bit more kind of accusatory towards the way things are, and a little bit more finding fault with the situations that the poor and minorities find themselves. And it's another reason why humanists can really find a lot of themes to identify with in here. There's so many, and I have limited time, but I'll try to go through a couple. This one's called "They Will Say," and I should say he wrote a lot about Chicago. He really loved Chicago. He claimed he coined the city of big shoulders, and wrote about the Windy City, and a lot of the things that we know about Chicago are kind of Sandburgian inventions. He really loved Chicago, and he wrote triumphant poems about Chicago. But then he said, "They will say, of my city, Chicago, the worst that men will ever say is this: you took little children away from the sun and the dew and the glimmers that played in the grass under the great sky and the reckless rain. You put them between walls to work, broken and smothered, for bread and wages, to eat dust in their throats and die empty-hearted for a little handful of pay on a few Saturday nights." That's the worst that they will say about Chicago, and that's pretty bad. He wrote a lot of stuff that just, really paints the picture of the workers of the day that is challenging. And like I said, don't know why he wasn't thrown in jail. Mill doors. It's like a paper mill. You never come back. I say goodbye when I see you going in the doors, and the hopeless open doors that call and wait and take you then for how many cents a day? How many cents for the sleepy eyes and fingers? I say goodbye because I know they tap your wrists in the dark, in the silence day by day, and all the blood of you drop by drop, and you are old before you are young. You never come back. This is like Henry Rollins kind of rock rage, right? and these aren't the heaviest ones, but he wrote a lot about this kind of stuff. He did a lot of journalism and wrote a collection about the Chicago race riots that won some awards. And he really saw the plight of the people, the poor, Native Americans. At that time, the plight of the Indians was not the plight of the Indians. It was Buffalo Bill and how great the white man is. And we were not. There was no concept of genocide. It was, bringing civilization to the savages. It was Christianizing the heathen. It was manifest destiny, right? This guy did not go for that. He saw what we were doing for what he thought it was. And if you read what some of the writings now, he's way, way ahead of his time. He also wrote a lot about war and pacifism in a big, big way. I'll read one light one and one heavy one. In World War I was one of the many wars that he lived through and wrote about. And World War I is really rough stuff. I mean, Battle of the Marne, the French were losing like 20,000 men in a day. And we had the Civil War, but the total losses of the Civil War were lost, in a month on the Eastern Front, and in just butchery, right? He wrote about the A.E.F, the American Expeditionary Force, this way. This is, I believe, near the end or shortly after the First World War. There will be a rusty gun on the wall, sweetheart, the rifle grooves curling with flakes of rust. A spider will make a silver string nest in the warmest, darkest corner of it. The trigger and the rangefinder, they too will be rusty, and no hands will polish the gun. It will hang on the wall. Forefingers and thumbs will point absently and casually toward it. It will be spoken among half-forgotten, wish-to-be-forgotten things. But they will tell the spider, go on, you're doing good work. That was a light. That's a light. I think that's rather nice. This is a little bit more closer to typical for Carl Sandburg. 10 minutes now, I'm looking at this. I've gone by here before and wondered about it. This is a bronze memorial of a famous general riding horseback with a flag and a sword and a revolver on him. I want to smash the whole thing into a pile of junk to be hauled away to the scrapyard. Put it straight to you after the farmer, the miner, the shopman, the factory hand, the fireman, and the teamster have all been remembered with bronze memorials, shaping them on the job of getting all of us something to eat and something to wear when they stack a few silhouettes against the sky here in the park and show the real Huskies that are doing the work of the world and feeding people instead of butchering them. Then maybe I will stand here and look easy at this general of the army holding a flag in the air and riding like hell on horseback, ready to kill anybody that gets in his way, ready to run the red blood and slush the bowels of men all over the sweet new grass of the prairie. That's, I think, how he really felt. Can you imagine Alien and Sedition Acts are on the books? This guy's going around the country talking about this, and nobody put him in jail. I don't know how he did it. I just don't. Live to be 95. Feminism. He wrote a poem called Aprons of Silence. I'm not going to read it because it's too hard. But, you know, he saw the way that women are treated in the society that he was in. And he wrote about it. This is a light one. This is wrote right near the end of his writing career. This is a light one. It's called Little Girl, Be Careful What You Said. And little girl, be careful what you say when you make talk with words. For words are made of syllables, and syllables, child, are made of air. And air is so thin. Air is the breath of God. Air is finer than fire or mist, finer than water or moonlight, finer than spider webs in the moon, finer than water flowers in the morning. And words are strong too, stronger than rocks or steel, stronger than potatoes, corn, fish, cattle, and soft too, soft as little pigeon eggs, soft as the music of hummingbird wings. So, little girl, when you speak greetings, when you tell jokes, make wishes or prayers, be careful, be careless. Be careful. Be what you wish to be. So he sees this patriarchy and he wants to peel just a corner up on the end and say, don't believe what you see, you know. Be what you wish to be. And, you know, again, he just, he got away with it, right? This is one. Actually, you know, that one's a little rough too. Maybe we'll save it for an encore if we got time. A religion, we're going to get to this, right? We're going to get to it. You guys might like this Isle of Patmos. I didn't do my homework. Does anybody know what Isle of Patmos is?
It's where St. John the Divine wrote the book of Revelation.
Okay. So, yeah, I knew I'd heard of it. I knew it was important. This is short. The invisible chariots of the tall sky must hold archangels, themselves invisible. I have seen these chariots, so have you. Or you've missed something. I have talked with archangels, so have you. Or you've missed something. I carry archangels with me wherever I go, and so do you, or you are missing something. I'm a smoke wisp, so are you. I need archangels, so do you. contrary to what you were talking about this morning. Else you're missing something. I make archangels as I need them, so do you. Riders we are in white robes, wings, riders of chosen chariots. He said, we make our own meanings in life. We don't need someone to tell us what we need to believe in. We make our own archangels, and so do you, even if someone is telling you what you believe, right? He's got one called They Ask, Is God Too Lonely? Which you guys might enjoy. When God scooped up a handful of dust and spit on it and molded the shape of man and blew a breath into it and told it to walk, that was a great day. And did God do this because he was lonely? Did God say to himself he must have company and therefore he would make man to walk the earth and set apart churches for speech and song with God? These are questions. They are scrawled in old caves. They are painted in tall cathedrals. There are men and women so lonely they believe God too is lonely. Right? He didn't stand for being told what to believe. How are we doing on time?
Do 5 more minutes.
All right, we got 5 minutes. So we got a lottery here. We got another one about religion. It's a lot more fiery, which I don't know if we need to hear. We got one which I believe, although I am not scholar enough and historian enough to say for sure, but I believe is about gay rights in a time when you don't talk about that, 1926. And we got one about the sayings of a black worker and the kinds of things that he was picking up as he traveled the country. So we have those three. Does anybody have a favorite? Numero dos? Okay, so this is after Gertrude Stein wrote the famous piece about Mrs. Furr. Does anybody know that? She wrote these word poems that just were really repetitive, and it was almost the sound of the words that brought the point across and not what they said. And she wrote, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have it, but she wrote something about these two women living together, and they regularly lived together, and they lived together regularly, and they regularly did the things that they did, and they were gay, and they were gay in being gay, but not too gay, but gayer than most, and they were gaily going about and doing their regularly things and regularly being gay. And it went on and on about these two women living together and how normal and gay they were. And this was sort of often recognized as being sort of the first use of gay to mean what we think of as gay now. Prior to that, gay kind of meant happy but in a scandalous way, like a gay. What's the word I'm thinking of? Like a gay bachelor was not a gay man like we think of now. It wasn't like Will and Grace Gay. It was like Richard Burton, having a good time. So 339. This is called Spring Carries Surprises. And I'm surprised no one knows this. Spring Carries Surprises. This is 4 years after Stein's poem comes out. Be gay now. Shadows go fast these days, unlocking the locks of blossoms. The lilacs never know how. The oleanders along the old walls, the peach trees over the hills, out of the lockups they go, out and crying with leaves. They never know how. Be gay, this is the time. The little keys of the climbing runners, the opening of the doors again, the letting loose of the shuttering. There is the time. Be gay now. Ask spring why, asking your heart why. Go around gay and foolish why. God, be easy on your fool heart if you don't go around asking spring in your heart. Why? 3 times like that, or else one long why? Be gay now. It's not totally clear, And that's the way, like a lot of Walt Whitman stuff is not very clear, right? But I think that that's what he was writing about. And Sandburg wasn't gay, but I think he was giving people a little permission. That's just my pet theory. We're kind of out of time, but there's some. This is just kind of a bibliography. He wrote 6 volumes of poetry. They're all about like this. And the collected one, biographies of Mary Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, Edward Steichen, a photographer, and his own autobiography, essays, a novel, journalism, children's books. I mean, just incredible output, and all of it's just really great to read. So I encourage all you to read a little bit of Sandburg, just a little bit, and see how it goes. It's really good stuff. Any questions or else I'm finished. All right. Thanks very much.